مساء الخير، رجعنا لكم تاني مع سيشن مهمة جدا مع مستر جيمس تشيرش. مستر جيمس تشيرش هو المؤلف لكتاب Investable Entrepreneur. هو الكتاب اللي أكثر مبيعا في أمازون. هو الكو فاوندر في روبوت ماسكوت. هو عطى وبيدي سيشنز وبيدي موضوعات كتيرة قوي في البزنس، سواء على المستوى المحلي والمستوى الدولي، سواء اونلاين او اوفلاين. مستر جيمس هيكون معانا النهارده بيتكلمنا عن موضوع مهم جدا، وهو الانفستمنت. لما في وقت من الاوقات ان اي صاحب يعني شركه بيعوز ان هو يزود ويكبر الشركه بتاعته، فبيدور على انفستمنت. فهو يكلمنا النهارده ازاي تحدد انك محتاج فعلا تمويل، وازاي تحدد ان انت خلاص وصلت وعايز انطلق في حته الانفستمنت. So dear Mr. James Tchurch, he is the author of the Amazon best-selling book Investable Entrepreneur. He's the co-founder and COO of the British agency Robert Moscott. He has ran mentoring sessions at Tech Hub, Google Campus, and Runway East. He delivered so many sessions for Chartered Institute of Marketing, University College London, and University of East Anglia. He speaks internationally at online and offline business events and so many seminars. So I'm really thrilled to announce that we're having a session about how to become an investable entrepreneur with Mr. James Tchurch. So the stage is yours, Mr. James. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Introduction. Thank you. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thrilled to be here talking to you this afternoon. So let me jump into it. I've been given a great introduction, but just cover it myself. I'm the author of the best-selling book Investable Entrepreneur, and I'm going to talk to you about key themes in that. As I said, I'm also the CEO and co-founder at Robot Mascot. And at Robot Mascot, we create investment materials that convince investors. And when we do that, our clients are 30 times more likely to raise the investment that we need. And because of that, we've become recognised as the UK's leading pitch agency. We're trusted by the likes of Crowd and Seeders, the largest crowdfunding platforms, then global accelerators, and a number of others, and won some awards along the way, which is pretty awesome. Essentially, at the heart of what I do at Robot Mascot, the heart of what we believe in at Robot Mascot is that we see great ideas, innovations like yours flourish, and it's our mission to put an end to great ideas failing before communicating. So let's start by talking about the idea that there's never actually been a better time to raise investment than right now. Can you hear me? There seems to be. Oh, you can. Can you hear me now? Can everybody hear me? Or do we have sound issues? There's still an echo. Wonder why that is. Okay. Okay. What it is. Can you hear me better now? Got a much better. Well, I'm going to keep going. If there's still a problem with the sound, then let me know in the chat. But hopefully we've resolved that now. No, the issue is much better now. There's still an echo. Okay, I'm getting mixed messages, so I'm just going to plow through and hopefully it'll sort itself out. I want to start with the idea that there's never been a better time to raise investment than now. So more than at any point in here, there's more money being put into businesses like startup and scale businesses than ever before. So what we've seen over the last few years is unprecedented growth. So these are the figures from across Europe. We've seen 150% growth over the last 5 years, and the amount of money being invested to start up and scale businesses. And this is true for Asia and the US as well. Unbelievable growth. And even in 2020, even when there was a global pandemic and the world was on lockdown, there was more investment than ever invested in businesses like yours. It's even more exciting for me and clients and staff like you is that 2021 was the first quarter of 2021 was the biggest on record with 60% growth in some categories in the amount of investment being invested into startups. So there is more money than ever before for businesses like yours, and there's a good reason for this. It happens time and again. Every time there's a global recession, every time there's economic uncertainty, businesses like yours are the ones that investors turn to. They remove themselves away from the volatile stock market, in some cases this is the volatile property market, and instead they look to invest in businesses that are going to see through any economic downturn, any economic uncertainty. So if we cast our minds back to 2008, you can see here in the midst of the financial crisis and the global recession that followed, the number of
Hello, Mr. James. Actually, the voice, there is kind of an echo as well. So could you fix it? Can't hear you well. I'm sorry, Mr. James. There's kind of an issue in the voice. Could you change it? Could you change it, the voice? I mean, so all the sound system. I mean, so could you change it? Like nobody can hear you. Mr. James, again, we cannot hear you. Could you put on any headphone, another source for mic, I mean, so nobody can hear you. So no, just to try it again, like give it a go. Okay, so the attendees, could you hear me? Is it clear? Okay, great. So Mr. James, again, voice is not here at all. طيب انا متاسفين جدا يعني بس على التكنيكال ايشو ديت. هنرجع ناخد بس يعني بريك صغير جدا، دقيقتين 3 ونرجع تاني بس نظبط الصوت ونرجع تاني. ما تروحوش في اي حته، خليكم مستنيين. شكرا. Okay, so we're back now. Yeah, we can resume our session. Thank you.
Okay.
James. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm really sorry about the technical issues there, everyone, but let me continue. Hopefully you can hear me now, fingers crossed. So I was just saying, there's more capital than ever before being invested into startups like yours. There's been an unprecedented growth over the last 5 years, 150% growth in Europe alone. The same is true for Asia and the States as well. And even in 2020, when we had a global lockdown, it was a record-breaking year for the amount of investment being invested into businesses like yours. And there's a reason for that, and that's because during times of economic recession, money flows out of the stock market and out of the property market, which are deemed more volatile, and into startup businesses. So we cast our minds back to 2008, in the midst of the financial crisis. We saw a massive increase in the number of VC and angel deals being done. The likes of Uber, Airbnb, WhatsApp, Instagram all got their first major rounds of funding. And that theme, that phase continued for a number of years before it started to plateau out in more recent years. And now we're seeing a huge resurgence and a huge growth in the amount of investment being done in 2021. In fact, the first quarter of 2021, we've seen 60% year-on-year growth in the UK for the amount of investments being done. And I'm sure that is replicated globally as well. So lots of investors are looking and turning to businesses like yours right now. So there's more money than ever before, but there is a problem, and that's that there's lots of demand as well. So the average angel investors are seeing 10 pitch decks a week, of which 1 is of interest, and on average they make just 2 investments a year. So they're seeing 520 pitch decks and making just 2 investments a year. So as a founder, you really need to do something to stand out to make sure you're in that category. For VCs, incidentally, they invest in 1 in every 150 deals they see on average. So there's a huge surplus of potential investments, and only a few, even though the numbers are higher than ever, only a few are lucky enough to make the cut. It actually works out to be less than 1%. Less than 1% of businesses are successfully funded by equity investment from angels and VCs combined. Less than 1%. That's a very small percentage of businesses that are successfully raising equity investment. So something's getting in the way, and we made it our mission at Robot Mascot to find out what that was. What is getting in the way? What can founders do better to make sure that they position themselves in a way that will make investors sit up, take notice, and want to invest in their business. And what we found is that essentially, let's imagine that there's two people, and they both look the same, they may even sound the same, but they're both speaking different languages. One's speaking English and say the other is speaking French. So they're talking to each other and stuff should be getting done, but they're not communicating in the same language. There's this breakdown in communication. And that's what's happening between investors and entrepreneurs. So investors like to talk the language of risk, assets, proof, and implementation, whereas entrepreneurs love to talk about opportunities, incomes, possibilities, and ideas. And it's these two different ways of talking about the same thing that's putting a barrier up between the investor and the entrepreneur. And it's this reason, this breakdown in communication, that means that investors are getting confused and only 1% of entrepreneurs are successfully raising investment. So great ideas are essentially failing because of poor communication. When an investor wants to talk about risk and a founder comes along and excitedly talks about all the opportunities, it just sounds scary. When an investor wants to hear about the underlying assets in the business, talking about income is pretty irrelevant. When an investor wants to hear about the underlying proof that the business has, talking about the possibilities just sounds like long shots. And when an investor wants to talk about implementation and a founder comes along and just talks about their idea, it's pretty meaningless. They want to know how you can implement that idea to make it a success. They don't really care about the idea itself. So who do investors back? Well, they back investable entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs that can speak the same language. These are the entrepreneurs in that top 1% who are successfully raising investment. I call them investable entrepreneurs, and my whole book is around how to become one of these top 1% entrepreneurs. So someone like Elon Musk, this guy here, he is a classic example of an investable entrepreneur. He doesn't need a proof of concept to raise millions of dollars. He can have a new idea tomorrow and people would invest in it without question, because he's got a proven track record that if you invest in one of these guys' businesses, it's gonna, the shareholdings, the value of that business is going to increase dramatically. He's proven that he can do it, and you're going to get a great return. So he could put a link out on Twitter, and he would get people investing within minutes, and he'd raise millions in a matter of seconds. But if you're not Elon Musk, what do you do? If you're starting out for the first time and don't have a proven track record, what do you do? Well, this is what I want to share with you today. So an investable entrepreneur looks like three things in the eyes of an investor. They have to be highly resourceful, they need to understand the financial risks, and they need to understand commercial success. So by highly resourceful, I mean the type of entrepreneur that can get people really excited about their vision. They can get people to buy into their ideas, because that means they can get talent that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. They can get this great talent to come and work with them for a lower than market rate in return for equity. They can get great advisors on their team who want to help and support the business because they believe in the idea, they believe in the concept, they believe in the vision. They can get great commercial partnerships that are going to give them access to loads of opportunities, whether that be customers or products or partnerships. All of these things come to highly resourceful entrepreneurs. And of course, they can attract capital when they need it too. So highly resourceful entrepreneurs can get people to buy into their vision and they can make stuff happen. They also want to find an entrepreneur that understands the financial risks. They're not a blind optimist. They're someone who understands the risks, but they've also considered these risks and they're willing to take those risks. They understand the risks that they're asking the investors to take financially too. They also want to invest in an entrepreneur that understands how to create commercial success. They know how they're going to get from where they are now to where they want to be, to where they're going to get a highly valuable exit on the business. How are you going to, what stepping stones are you going to take over the next few years to get from where you are now to a point where I, as an investor, could look at this and say, yeah, I can see myself getting a return from this. You've got the strategy in place to grow, a sensible strategy in place on how to grow a business and deliver me a commercial return. So highly resourceful, understand the risks, and understand commercial success. If you're two of these three things, we've got different names for these people. We've got the change maker, the asset manager, the leader. None of these people get the type of investment that you're after. It's only when all three things come together that you get the investable entrepreneur. When you're highly resourceful, you understand the risks and you understand commercial success. When you can demonstrate that to an investor, they're the types of founders that raise the investment that you're looking for. So there's three critical fundraising assets that you need to be able to demonstrate this to an investor. Because it's all well and good knowing this, but how do I actually demonstrate this to an investor? How do I showcase to them that I'm highly resourceful, I understand the risks, I understand commercial success, I'm the perfect person to invest in? So there's three assets you need. I call them the critical fundraising assets. The first is the pitch, the second is the projections, and the final one is the plan. So the pitch is the thing that demonstrates you're highly resourceful. It's the thing, the tool that you use to demonstrate to an investor that you can get people to buy into your vision. It's the thing that's going to make them get excited about your business. The projections are going to demonstrate the financial risks and also the potential rewards. They're going to show that you understand the risks, how much investment you're going to need over the life of the business, how much it's going to cost you, what the risks are in terms of how much marketing and product development spend you're going to need up front before you've even launched to market and started earning some money. All of these risks are tied up in your financial projections. And also then you have your business plan, the strategic implementation plan for how you're going to get from where you are now to where you want to be. It's going to show the short term, what are you going to do with their money right now, but also the long-term plan. What are you going to do over the next 5 years or so to get yourself to the point of exit? These are the three critical fundraising assets. These are the three things that if you put these in place to a high enough standard, you become in the top 1% of entrepreneurs. You become an investable entrepreneur. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail, your fundraising assets. So we'll start with the business plan because this is where it should start. Most founders like to start with their pitch. Really, you should be starting with the plan. The pitch is the summary of these other two assets, the plan and the projections. So we want to start with the plan. We want to detail our strategic thinking. How are we going to actually make this happen? How are we going to take this beyond an idea into something that's commercially viable? So you need that medium-term plan and that long-term plan. That medium-term plan being, I need to raise money for the next 12 to 18 months. This is how I'm going to spend that money. And here's the results I expect from it. And then the long-term plan. What strategic acquisitions might I make over the coming 5 years? What new markets might I launch into? What new territories might I launch into as we grow in order to achieve the types of revenue we're going to need to achieve a profitable exit? We're going to want to talk about your market research. You're going to want to talk about your marketing or go-to-market strategy. You're going to want to talk about your investment objectives and your exit plan, and you're going to need your business valuation. All of these things combined become your plan asset. They're all in your business plan. It's about a 10,000 word document, is a good size that just details all of the workings, all of your thinking down on paper. So if an investor's interested in you and they want to know the answer to something, it's in this document. There's a top level overview of how you're going to build this business for the next 5 years in a 10,000 word document that you can just hand them and say, this is how we're going to do it. And then you can have serious and meaningful conversations. You become a really impressive founder with a really clear strategy and implementation strategy for success. That strategy is going to inform your financial performance. So it makes sense that the next thing you create should be your financial projections, your projection assets. Now, when it comes to your projections, there's a few different things you should be presenting to an investor, not just one. A lot of founders will present perhaps just a cash flow forecast. What you really need to show is your income and expenditure, your P&L forecast for the 5 years. You then need to show your cash flow forecast, because this is a thing that's going to show how much money you're going to spend, but also how much income you're going to have, and therefore what your bank balance will be. And that's the thing that's going to tell you how much money you need to raise in the first place. Your cash flow will presumably be negative for the first few years, because otherwise you wouldn't need to raise investment. You're spending more money than you're earning because you're investing it into development of technology, developing your marketing strategy, whatever it may be. That minus number, when you look at your cash flows, how much money you need to raise. So if it's minus 750K in the first 12 months, that's how much money you need to raise to implement your plan. If that's too much, if you feel that that's a bit of a push, given where I am, I could only realistically afford to be able to raise 300k, then you need to look back at your strategic plan and think about how can you do things differently, how you can do things cheaper. So the two things are very connected, but it's your cash flow that tells you how much money you're going to need to raise. You've got a rolling balance sheet, so investors can see the underlying assets in the business. Then you're going to want to pull out your key metrics and a financial summary. What are your performance metrics over the next 5 years? What kind of customer acquisition cost are you going to get? What's your return on investment going to be? What's your lifetime value? All of these things, all of these key metrics that investors are looking for. An investable entrepreneur doesn't just present some spreadsheets and say, there you go, investor, knock yourself out. What they do is they present a table of key metrics for the 5-year forecast. This is our performance in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. These are the metrics we think we're going to be able to hit with this business. So they're all there and they're presented in front of the investor. So you're essentially saying to them, look, I know what you're looking for. I'm speaking your language. We can work well together. You need this information. I'm presenting it to you so you don't have to try and figure it out for yourself. And these little things, these little marginal gains are the things that make the difference between those that end up on the no pile and those that end up with serious and meaningful conversations with investors. Then finally, you have your pitch assets. So we've identified that there's 5 different pitch assets that an investable entrepreneur has as part of their toolkit, as part of their arsenal. The first is the investor pitch. That's your full 15 to 20 slide pitch deck. You could send it to an investor and they could read it without you needing to be there to present anything. They'd be able to get your business and want to talk about it to you in more detail. So this is like the most brochure-esque form of your pitch. It's essentially a summary of those other 2 assets, the business plan and the financial projections. It gives us a flavor of kind of what the big vision is, but also what the strategic implementation is going to be. So I can be confident that having a conversation with you is going to be worth my time. Then you have the teaser pitch. That tends to focus just on the big vision and the value proposition, selling people into the product and the idea and the concept. So when you have more meaningful conversations, when you present to them in person, they're already bought into the concept. They're already bought into the idea. So they've got that emotional connection with you. You then have the presentation pitch. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's a slide like this with just a few bullet points and you talk through the narrative verbally. So it's just a cut down version of your investor pitch. You then have your one pager, which is your business plan on a page. So you just put in the top level overview of your business plan on one page. So that's the strategic information covered off in a quick summary. And then an expression of interest form, which is a really useful document that very few founders use, but some of the best founders when it comes to closing rounds use expression of interest forms. And it's essentially when you get a verbal commitment from an investor, get them to fill out a form to say, yeah, I'm interested in investing. Here's my name, here's my details, here's how much I'd be looking to invest. And start collecting up those expressions of interest form, with the idea being that, say I'm raising £1 million, once you've got 1.25 million of expressions of interest, investors that you've had good conversations with who said, yeah, I'd like to be involved in the round, let me know when you're closing the round, you can collect up those expressions of interest form. Once you've got more than you need, you can start ringing back investors and saying, look, I'm oversubscribed. I was after 1 million, I've got 1.25 million committed. Are you in? And 99.9% of the time that investor's in, because they don't want to miss out on this opportunity that so many other investors have been able to see the potential into. So it's about creating a herd mentality, making them feel like they're not the only one investing. You've got all of this interest, giving a bit of FOMO, making investors feel like they're going to miss out. And then you're going to be able to close that round. And if a couple do drop out, it doesn't matter because you've got more expressions of interest than the amount of money you need to raise. So the best founders use tools like that to help seal the deal and help close the round. So that's just a very quick summary on the type of assets that you're going to need. But what you're essentially doing with these assets, with the pitch, the projections, the plan, you're demonstrating that you're highly resourceful. You're demonstrating that you understand the financial risks, and you're demonstrating you understand the commercial success. And essentially what you're saying to an investor, you're signaling to them that you can be trusted with their money. You're the type of entrepreneur who I could give my money to and know it's in safe hands. They have a plan for success. They understand the financial risks that are involved in this business, and God, they can get people to buy into their vision, and they're going to be able to get people to help them and support them, unwilling them to succeed. All these other investors are, and the same is going to be true for their team and for their associates and for their partners. And once you can demonstrate these three things together, you become a very investable character. You've become a very investable person. And it becomes less about the idea. It's not how good the idea is, it's how good are you at making this idea a success. And that's what you're trying to demonstrate through these assets, is that you and your team are the people who can make this a success. So that brings us to the end. We've run on slightly over time because we had the sound issue. So I tried to go a bit quickly there to catch up on some time. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight as to the types of things you need to produce if you're seriously looking to raise some kind of substantial kind of pre-seed, seed, Series A investment. You can find out much more about all of that in my book, Investable Entrepreneur, which is available on Amazon as well as a few other bookstores as well. So feel free to delve deep into the concept of becoming an investable entrepreneur through that book. For those of you who are thinking of raising investment in maybe the next 6 to 12 months, you might like to take our free scorecard. It's pitchready.co.uk. It's about 30 or so questions, yes or no questions, and we'll benchmark your current assets that we talked about today, your pitch, your plan, and your projections, and you'll get a free 12-page report with suggestions on how you can improve those assets. So take advantage of that. It's completely free. There's no money exchanging hands. That's something that we just give away for free because we want to help as many founders as possible to raise the investment they need. So head over to pitchready.co.uk, take your assessment, get your free 12-page report, and see if you are an investable entrepreneur or how far away you are from being an investable entrepreneur. And that brings me to the end. So if you want to connect with me, you can do on LinkedIn. I'm James Church, or you can join my Facebook group, Investable Entrepreneur, where I share insights there as well. But that's everything from me. I'm happy to stick around for questions if we have time, but I know that we have gone over because of the technical difficulties. So I'll just invite the host back into the room, and if there are any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A feature. Cool. When to seek funds and when the co-founder. Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? So when can you seek funding when everyone's building the product, right? I think that's the question. It's really tricky to split your time. A lot of founders that I talk to, in fact, there's a quote I think about this in the book, or at least one of the founders quoted in the book expressed this to me. It's a full-time job. Raising funds is a full-time job. You've got to create all these assets. You've got to satisfy investor demand. You've got to, it's running a full campaign, like a business-to-business sales and marketing campaign. You've got to identify potential investors. You've then got to pitch to them. You've then got to have those meaningful conversations to close the deal. Then you've got to do all the legal paperwork to make the deal happen. It's a full-time job, and there's no way of avoiding the fact that it's a full-time job. So if you've got a co-founder, the great thing is that one of them can be tasked with raising investment, and that becomes their full-time job, and the other co-founder is focused on building the product and building the MVP or whatever it may be. But one does funding, the other runs the business for a period of 6 months or so, and then you'll get your funding much quicker. I think the story in the book is that there was a founder who was trying to do both part-time for about a year, and they never got anywhere. And as soon as they focused their whole time, their co-founder took care of the business and they just focused solely on funding, in about 3 months, they managed to close their round. So if you can focus on it full time, you will. There's no shame in pausing the business development, especially if you're in the early stages. If you've built an MVP, you've done some tests, you don't have to keep growing the business. You can pause for 3 months, go and raise some investment, and then come back to it. Especially if you're a sole founder, you might have to do that. You don't have to, you can go to an investor and say, look, this is what we've achieved so far. I now need some investment to now launch. Very different if you're in the scale-up phase, of course, but then you have a bigger team. You should be able to have a team that runs itself. If you're a scale-up and you're seeking Series A funding, you should be in a position where you can take some time away from the business to focus on funding. But in those early years, yeah, absolutely, you're going to need to choose one or the other, and try and focus on it full time. And ultimately, you'll end up getting the result much quicker as well, because rather than spending a year doing both, kind of half of each, you're just 3 months on funding, get the money in the bank, then move on. So that would be my advice. Any other questions for me while I'm here? I don't know where the host is. He's left us. So I'm happy to stick around until then, because I think he needs to wrap up the session at some point. Any other questions? Happy to answer them. No? No more questions? Okay, well, I don't know how to end this session. I don't know where the host has gone. We've been neglected. But I hope you got a lot from it. I know it's been a whistle-stop tour. Lots of hearts and thumbs up coming through. So hopefully that's a good thing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to do now. There's no host. Oh, there he is. Hey.
Yeah, I'm here.
I was filling time. I was blagging my way through, filling time, waiting for you to appear.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think we're all good.
I was just waiting for you, like just join the session. I mean, so thank you so much for your valuable time. It's been here with us. I'm pretty sure that we have got lots of things about the entrepreneurship and how to become an investable entrepreneur. Okay, so thank you so much. ودلوقتي معانا
You're very welcome.
اوكي دلوقتي معانا سيشن مهمه جدا مع مستر ايمن زهران. ما تروحوش في اي حته غير على السيشن هناك دلوقتي، ويلا بينا. شكرا. ثانك يو. باي باي.